Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a 12-team PPR mock draft from the 7th overall spot using FantasyPros Draft Wizard. The roster positions for today's mock are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, kicker, defense, and 6 bench spots. We're going to be drafting up against the composite ADP from ESPN, NFL, RT Sports, and Sleeper, as well as the expert consensus rankings from Fantasy Pros. We also adjusted the position value of wide receivers from normal to high, because this season, unlike in prior seasons, the wide receivers are going to be coming off the board much more early in drafts and at a much higher rate. But before we can actually break down this mock draft and start it up, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying the, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, hit that like button down below as well, whether you are new to the channel or not. Follow me on Twitter if you would like, at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. So the draft begins with Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, and Saquon Barkley. So we are up on the clock here. This isn't a super unorthodox start to the draft. Now, I 100% am taking Saquon Barkley behind Bijan Robinson. So if I'm at the 106 and I want a running back, and Eckler and Christian McCaffrey are already gone, I am going Bijan Robinson every single time and twice on Sunday. Bijan looked incredible in that preseason action. I already knew he was incredible, but just that adds even further onto my opinion, right? Just seeing how good he looked in that preseason action. So we are up on the clock here. And to me, this is a very easy selection. It is going to be Tyreek Hill. We got the news today that Josh Jacobs is expected to report to the Las Vegas Raiders before week 1, which is something I have been saying for months, or ever since he started holding out, I guess, whenever that was. But Josh Jacobs is a guy that legitimately looked like one of the best running backs in the NFL. I think his ADP is going to move very, very quickly. He was going at the end of the second or in the 3rd round in a majority of drafts. I think he should be off the board by the middle of the 2nd round at this point. I think we're going to be able to get him at the 206. I think by the end of this week, when it becomes more and more obvious that he's coming back, right? More people read that report. He might end up even being a very early 2nd rounder. And in those RB heavy rooms, right? There are going to be drafts where people are stuck in their ways. They're going to draft a million running backs early on. There's a chance that, Josh Jacobs could go in the late 1st round after a guy like Bijan. Maybe some people like Josh Jacobs more than Nick Chubb, and you can definitely, even though I'm a Nick Chubb truther, I am the fan club of the 9-inch Nicholas Chubb bandwagon. I really do believe that Josh Jacobs could go ahead of him. So if Tyreek was not here, though, I probably wouldn't go wide receiver. I do like Diggs, Lamb, Amon-Ra, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams. I probably would just lean with Bijan if he was here. Now, if Bijan was not here, I would have went with Stephon Diggs, but since Tyreek is here, we are going with him. He is basically a no-brainer at this spot at the 7th overall pick. Tyreek Hill has the upside to be the #1 wide receiver. If Tyreek Hill is able to have a full season with Tua Tagovailoa, I genuinely believe the upside is over 2,000 receiving yards. Even with Jalen Waddle there, I think Tyreek Hill is a surefire smash in 2023 fantasy football. After Tyreek, we see Travis Kelce, Bijan Robinson, Stephon Diggs, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Tony Pollard, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, and Derrick Henry. So Kelce going at the 108. I feel like that is around where I would feel comfortable taking him at the 108 or the 109. I've talked about it a ton. Some people's draft philosophy is different than mine. They want to get that supreme positional advantage in a 12-team league. I don't think it's as important in a 12-team league as in a 10 or an 8-team league, but I definitely get the thought process, right? Travis Kelce is essentially one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and you could play him as your tight end, right? There are going to be people rolling out fucking Gerald Everett some weeks, and if your opponent has Travis Kelce, that could be incredibly intimidating, because not only is Travis Kelce on a whole nother level than a guy like Gerald Everett, Travis Kelce might score 25 more points than Gerald Everett, right? Everett might score 5 points, and Travis Kelce might go balls deep into a defense and score 30 fantasy points. So that's just kind of the reason why people talk themselves into Kelce super early. So looking at the board here, best players available: Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave. For me, we are going to go with Josh Jacobs. Just getting a elite running back like Josh Jacobs at this pick would make my mouth salivate in the second round. Now, Jonathan Taylor is reportedly back with the team as well. He plans to travel with the Colts to Philadelphia for their preseason game, but, and this is a big but like Kim Kardashian, Taylor remains on the PUP list and will need to be activated before he can even practice with the team. Taylor will be returning from a personal leave of absence that was approved by the team. And like this report says from Jesse Garcia, fantasy managers will want to monitor practice reports. You want to be incredibly cautious with Jonathan Taylor. Now, it would appear on paper that he wants to be back with the team. You want to know why? Because money talks. Money talks. But you still have to monitor things, because if Jonathan Taylor, I read something on Twitter that maybe Jonathan Taylor might elect to get surgery. And if he doesn't get the surgery, maybe that injury is still lingering into the season and maybe he gets hurt again. So I'm starting to kind of panic on Jonathan Taylor, if I'm being honest with you. But we are all steam ahead, choo-choo, for Josh Jacobs to have a humongous fucking season yet again in 2023. I'm a huge fan of this Raiders team compared to most. Now, I don't think the Raiders are going to be the best team in the NFL, far from it. But a lot of people are just heavily discrediting them because of Jimmy Garoppolo being their quarterback. Again, I get Jimmy Garoppolo isn't the best quarterback on earth, but I do believe in him more than most people. After Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams, Pat Mahomes, Joe Mixon, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave. The third opens with Travis Etienne, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Ramondre Stevenson, and Breece Hall. Interesting to see Breece Hall still getting selected in the third round. I think he does have league winner upside right late in the season when he's fully healthy. Maybe they retract the amount of workload that they give Dalvin Cook. A lot of these reports are talking about how Breece Hall's still the guy. They paid Dalvin Cook $8 million to shine Breece Hall's shoes. I don't know about that. I don't know why you would pay Dalvin Cook $8.5 million for the first 4 games of the season and then magically, I don't need him anymore, throw him away. Kind of scary when it comes to Breece Hall. So we are up on the clock here. Our team, Jacobs, Hill, T. Higgins. For me, I'm going quarterback here every single time. If one of the big 3 are available, I'm taking them. Now, in some leagues, all 3 of the quarterbacks might be gone by the second round. In some leagues, you might be playing with a bunch of people who are new to fantasy. They might all be gone in the first fucking round. But I think in a lot of more experienced leagues, the middle of the third round is a fair price to get Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts at. Now, normally, I do have Jalen Hurts ranked as the quarterback 1, so I do take Jalen Hurts over Josh Allen. But for the sake of today's video, to kind of differentiate my team, I talk about this a ton, you want to diversify your teams. If you go quarterback in the third round and Jalen Hurts is your guy, sometimes you might want to sprinkle in some Josh Allen, because if you have 10 teams with Jalen Hurts and Jalen Hurts ends up suffering some catastrophic injury, then every single one of your teams just got bent over a table. Now, you could still win your league, obviously, if your quarterback gets hurt that you drafted in the third round, but it does definitely hurt your chances, especially since you paid such heavy draft capital to select them. After Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jahmyr Gibbs, Mark Andrews, Najee Harris, Ron Jones, T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley, Joe Burrow, Jerry Jeudy, and Deebo Samuel. If none of you guys watched, or some of you guys didn't watch my live stream from yesterday, I did a 10-hour draft extravaganza. I did 10 best ball drafts with some guests on. If you didn't watch that, obviously you don't have to watch the whole thing, but there are some guests that you guys might know that you might want to check out on that stream. I thought it was a fun time, and again, it was a bunch of best ball drafts, so if you're new to best ball and you want some tips, they're definitely included in that video. So we are up on the clock here, and man, oh man, a lot of players that I really liked went: Jalen Hurts, Jahmyr Gibbs, Mark Andrews, Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley, Joe Shiesty, Jerry Jeudy, and Deebo Samuel. Najee Harris, a report came out today from Matt Canada that Najee Harris is still the running back 1. Now, I know there has been so much hype about Jaylen Warren. Everyone has got down on their knees and given Jaylen Warren the gawk 9,000. But I've talked about this before. The Steelers' system is to have a workhorse running back. They drafted Najee Harris in the first round. They didn't pay a pretty penny to draft Jaylen Warren. So this team is almost handcuffed to Najee Harris, and they won't allow themselves to break free to soar and fly like Troy Bolton in High School Musical, right? They are just going to be bogged down by Najee Harris. Now, I'm a Jaylen Warren truther. I love Jaylen Warren. But I'm going to be honest with you, Najee Harris is probably going to get all the carries, and people are going to be shocked when he somehow finishes as like a top 14 running back. Now, I don't like picking him because I feel like his upside is very limited because he's not good. But at the same time, he's definitely going to get volume. So we went with Josh Allen, Jacobs, and Tyreek on our team so far. The running backs in this range for the 4th round, like, I get why people like Miles Sanders. I'm not taking him in the 4th round. Kenneth Walker, not a 4th round guy. Alexander Mattison, Dameon Pierce. If I had to take a running back here, it would be Dameon Pierce. But at this point, I don't want to take Dameon Pierce in the 4th round. I'm just going to pray to the football gods that he comes back to us in the 5th round. TJ Hawkinson, I've talked about this ad nauseum. He is like the least sexy tight end pick, or one of the least sexy tight end picks, because his upside really, to me, isn't the tight end one. They bring in Jordan Addison, sure. They throw the ball a shit ton, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in Minnesota. I think Hawkinson will be fine. He's never really going to destroy your team, but I also don't think he's going to be the reason why you win your league, right? I don't think you draft TJ Hawkinson and magically that wins your league. Now, there is something to be said about the condom that TJ Hawkinson throws around your roster, right? Every single week, you're getting 10 plus points out of your tight end, and that in itself is awesome. But I just don't think he really has that upside to surpass Kelsey as the tight end 1, whereas I don't like Kittle at all, but I could see Kittle finishing as the tight end 1. I could see Pitts as the tight end 1. Darren Waller as the tight end 1. I don't think I could see TJ Hawkinson doing that, if I'm being honest. So we're not taking tight end. We're avoiding the running backs. We already have a quarterback. So we're going wide receivers. Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, Drizzy, Drake London, Christian Watson. I want to go with Amari Cooper. He is my highest ranked wide receiver. If you guys have been watching this channel for some time, if you haven't been, hit that subscribe button down below, hit that like button. But I have been talking up Amari Cooper a shit ton. I believe so heavily in this Cleveland Browns offense. I am so in deep with the Cleveland Browns offense that if they suck, people are going to call me a fucking idiot. Because that is how much I believe in the Browns. I believe that Deshaun Watson is not washed up. Now, maybe he needs those massages to get loose, and maybe he'll never be good again because he can't get a tug after every single game. But at the end of the day, I think they bounce back. I think this offense is better. I think Amari Cooper is actually a really good talent. I don't know why the fuck the Cowboys traded him to the Browns for a used condom and a half-eaten bag of potato chips, but that's what happened. After Amari Cooper, Lamar Jackson, DJ, Wiki, Moore, TJ Hawkinson, Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Hopkins, James Conner, Chris Godwin, Kenneth Walker, Justin Fields, and Terry McLaurin. So we've seen kind of a more balanced quarterback draft here, right? No one is really blowing their load and panicking. This is something that happens a lot in fantasy drafts, right? The big 3 quarterbacks go Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts, and then in the end of the 3rd round, someone says, oh shit, I might not get this quarterback that I could have gotten maybe in the 5th round, and then they panic and they draft Justin Fields. They draft Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. For me, I like to wait. Now, I get if you are Joe Burrow's #1 fan, maybe you have to draft him at the end of the 3rd round if you want to get him, if you're in a more quarterback-heavy room. And that is something that I talk about a bunch as well. If you have been in your fantasy league for a while, most websites allow you to go back in the history of your league and look at the drafts in the past. You can see if your league is going to be super quarterback-heavy early on. Now, obviously, it is very clear that people change their mind, right? As people start playing fantasy more, they start to kind of not be the fool who takes a quarterback in the 1st round, right? But sometimes people are just stuck in their old ways, right? It takes them a while to change, and you might be able to realize, like, oh shit, over the last 3 years, in the first 4 rounds, 8 quarterbacks have went, and then you just know that. So if you really want that quarterback, you got to take them then. And that's something that I always do before my drafts is go back and kind of try to remember what was happening in my league, right? Who was doing what? Who makes these crazy decisions? Who reaches for the tight ends early? Things like that. And then you're just thinking way ahead of everyone else, right? No one else is doing that. No one. No one in your fantasy league is thinking to do that. And that's how you get the upper edge. So right now we got Josh Allen, Josh Jacobs, Tyreek Hill, and Amari Cooper. This is an excellent question that we are going to have for ourselves. What are the odds that after we select our pick here, that one of these running backs that I like comes back to us, right? We've already seen Lamar, DJ Moore, Hawkinson, Pierce, Sanders, Dobbins, Hopkins, Connor, Godwin, Walker, Fields, and McLaurin come off the board. So by the time we pick again, will one of Madison, Akers, Javonte, Montgomery come back to us? Now, maybe Montgomery will, because Fantasy Pros and all these websites just heavily discredit him. But I kind of want a guy that has legitimate RB1 upside. I love David Montgomery. I think he could finish as high as like the RB15, but that's not an RB1. I think that Akers and Alexander Madison have the off shot. Now, I'm not saying that it's a guarantee, that they have a chance to finish as a top 12 running back. But while David Montgomery's the safer option, while I love David Montgomery, I've talked him up a ton, I would rather take my shot here and then hope maybe a receiver falls that I like. Again, we already have our quarterback, so Justin Herbert the pervert or Trevor Lawrence are off the board. I love Darren Waller. I think Darren Waller is a stone cold lock by the end of the summer when you're doing your fantasy drafts. If you're doing them at the end of this week, next week, for Darren Waller to be a locked and loaded 5th round pick, I'm going to take the chance that he falls to the 6th round. I play my fantasy leagues. I live in New Jersey. Every single person I draft with lives in New Jersey. This is also an important tip. Where you live will impact your draft. If you're drafting with all your buddies from New Jersey, then the Giants and the Jets players are overvalued, even in the sharper leagues, because people want to get the guys that are on their favorite team. In a real draft, I try to keep things as unbiased as they get, right? But if maybe I galaxy brain myself into liking Bijan over Tyreek Hill, I'm probably still going to take Tyreek Hill in my real draft because I'm a Dolphins fan. And I want to have a player on the Dolphins. Now, this wasn't true when the Dolphins sucked ass, when the Dolphins were terrible, bottom feeders getting pounded out every single game. I wasn't like that, but now I am. The Giants and Jets look like solid teams. So if you play in a league with your friends from a certain state and you know the teams that they like, those players typically go earlier. Unless you're in a league with people that like all different teams, right? Not all of my friends are Jets and Giants fans. I'm friends with Cowboys fans, with Steelers fans, with Seahawks fans, with Browns fans, with Dolphins fans, right? There's a bunch of different teams in my drafts, but I am in some drafts where it's only Jets and Giants fans, and in those ones, like Garrett Wilson might end up being a first-round pick. You just have to know that going in. So we're not going to go with Waller here. We're going to wait. We're going to risk it for the biscuit, and we're going to go with Alexander Mattison. He didn't finish practice with an apparent injury 2 weeks ago, but that doesn't seem like it was anything serious. I think Alexander Mattison has the upside to smash this season. He's not going to be a workhorse running back. They are going to use other running backs around him. I think if you're going for that workhorse running back role in an offense, Cam Akers technically would be more of that. But Mattison is in a significantly better offense that runs a lot more plays, that is going to have the upside to score more fantasy points even with less amount of time played. But Cam Akers to me is definitely safer than Mattison because Mattison does have legitimate competition with him. Even though I don't think Chandler and all these other guys behind him are as good as him, Akers has virtually no run, right? None of those guys behind Cam Akers can even hold his jockstrap. So we're back up on the clock here. Madison, Watson, DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara, Justin Herbert the pervert, Darren Waller, Trevor Lawrence, George Kittle, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Rachaad White. So we see here a bit of a tight end run. This happens in drafts with quarterbacks and tight ends. You're going to see runs at the position. And just like the term runs, right, when you get diarrhea, people shit themselves, right? The guy that could have potentially gotten Pitts in like the 7th or 8th round because everyone and their mother is scared. They are quivering when they see that they might have to take Kyle Pitts, so they just pass on him. He goes in the 7th or 8th round sometimes, and this guy reached for him in the 6th round. Am I saying he's not worthy of a 6th round pick? He is worthy of a 6th round pick, but I just wouldn't take him there just with my draft knowledge of knowing a lot of the time he's going to fall a lot further. So we're up on the clock here, and Deontay Johnson would be an insta pick for me. I like Lockett. I like Michael Pittman as well, but Deontay Johnson is just a free square for me in fantasy football. This is a guy that gets all of the volume in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. This is going to be a team that is better. We already saw Kenny Pickett slicing and dicing his way through the defense in that preseason action. Now, obviously, they still have George Pickens. They still have Pat Freiermuth, who scored a touchdown and hit the fucking dab like it was 2017 after he scored, which I thought was hilarious. But they have Freiermuth, they have Pickens, but at the end of the day, Deontay Johnson is a target hog. He sucks down targets like Mike McCarthy eats pancakes at Denny's, which is at a rapid rate. So I fully expect Deontay Johnson to have a huge season again. 0 touchdowns last season. That is bound to change. Again, the Steelers offense, I don't expect them to become world beaters, but I expect them to not be absolutely dog shit. After Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, Dallas Goedert, Cam Akers, Tua Tagovailoa, Deshaun Watson, Pat Freiermuth, Dickie, Dak Prescott, Tyler Lockett in my pocket skirt, Mike Evans, Brandon Ayuk, Dalvin Cook, and Christian Kirk. I think Dalvin Cook is going to settle into the 6th round of drafts. There's clear upside with him that people just don't seem to realize. Like, I get that Breece Hall is so good. But there's a chance for the first like 4 games, Dalvin Cook is a workhorse on this team. And there's a chance that if Breece Hall was to get hurt, Dalvin Cook would legitimately be. I understand he didn't look as good last year. He looked slow. He looked sluggish. He looked like he was running through fucking molasses. But at the end of the day, the upside is very evident with him. So for me here, we have Jacobs and Madison. Madison, I love Alexander Madison, but there's clear downside with him, right? This is a more pass-heavy team. Sure, they run a lot of plays. There is some competition behind him that may steal away some of his pass-catching upside. So we got to factor that in. I want to go running back here. Now, Javonte Williams played a decent amount in this preseason game. He got a couple of dump-offs thrown his way, maybe 4 rush attempts. Again, this is a guy that might start off the season incredibly slow. He might not get a lot of touches early on, or maybe Sean Payton rips the fucking Band-Aid off and throws him out there to the Wolves instantly. That is something that is up for discussion. So if you want a super safe running back that's playing week 1, you know he's getting touches week 1, a lot of touches, you go with James Cook or David Montgomery, even Isaiah Pacheco, Khalil Herbert. All those guys feel like they have more guaranteed touches week 1 than Javonte Williams. But at the same time, while I kind of talk about how Madison's a little bit risky, week 1, I'm playing Madison, right? I'm not going to galaxy brain and even play James Cook, Javonte, any of them over him. So Madison would be locked into my lineup for week 1. So I feel like I've been afforded the opportunity to wait. Now, Javonte Williams is a big boom or bust guy to me. I could see the season ending where Javonte Williams looks like the Javonte Williams that we saw early on in his career. Some nice burst, great cutting ability. But there's also the season that plays out where he's rusty. He doesn't look that good. He's not getting as many carries. Samaje Perine's working him more. And, he's coming off that serious injury, so maybe he's just not the same guy. So there's clear risk and there's clear reward. If you want the high risk, high reward option, you go Javonte. You want to be safe, you go James Cook, David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco. We are going to go with Javonte Williams for this team. I feel like I'm afforded the opportunity to go for the more high upside guy. Plus, I feel confident in my own drafting skills. I feel like later in the draft, there's a lot of running backs I like that have high upside that we can throw into the lineup as well. So I'm willing to take that risk. I think the later you get into the drafts, I talk about this a bunch, you can rip the condom off, right? Early on, you want to be as safe as it gets, right? We know Jacobs, he's returning to the team. That's a safe pick. Tyreek in Miami, that's a safe pick. Josh Allen in Buffalo, that's a safe pick, right? But as you get deeper in, there's question marks with Madison, right? People are worried about him. They're a little bit scared. Right? You can do that in the 5th round. The 6th round, Deontay Johnson hasn't scored a touchdown in a fucking year. You can draft him. 7th round, Javonte Williams has risk, but I draft him. As you get deeper and deeper into the draft, you can take more risks. We still don't have a tight end, but at this point, the tight ends on the board just all feel the same. So we don't need to feel, I don't feel a need personally to reach on one of these guys. So after Javonte, George Pickens, Kirk Chains, Isaiah Pacheco, Michael Pittman, James Cook, David Montgomery, Hollywood Brown, AJ Dillon, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and the 49ers. I love Kirk Cousins more than most people, right? I am a fan of Kirk Chains. I think people like to shit on him for no real reason because it's fun to do it. I get why people do it. But in the 7th round, as they say on ESPN, come on, man. That's fucking insane. That is insane in the membrane. So we're back up on the clock here. With our running back core, I feel like we should go running back here. I love Jahan Dotson so much. I love Jordan Addison. I don't think any of them will fall back to us. But I'm fine going for the more upside picks of a guy like Michael Thomas, a little bit deeper into the draft. I know Gibson or Herbert aren't going to fall back to us. These are guys that are staples on my fantasy football rosters, Gibson and Herbert. I'll probably have one or the other on a majority of my teams. Now, maybe not actually, because a lot of my friends watch these YouTube videos, so they know that I want Gibson. That is the funniest thing about making fantasy football content. I talked about this with Danny from the Fantasy Stock Exchange on our live stream yesterday, the 10-hour live draft extravaganza, about how, like, when you're in a league with your friends, I talked to Bush about this too, they just know what you're going to do. They will take guys and be like, ha, you cocksucker, I got your favorite player. And it happens. And it is funny because it shows that your friends care about you, So that's what's most important. Even if all the players I like get stolen from me, at least it tells me that they care enough to listen. So you know what? At the end of the day, I can live with that. There's other players I like as well, but Gibson, Herbert, flip a coin. I'm going Herbert. I actually think Gibson is way safer, but Herbert to me has more upside to be just the lead back in Chicago, right? The clear running back one there over the other backs, right? They have Foreman, Roschon Johnson, right? I don't think those guys are anywhere near the skill level of Khalil Herbert, at least as of right now. But if Herbert was to get hurt, then he would obviously kind of potentially get cucked out of his job. After Herbert, Kadarius Toney, Samaje Perine, Jamal Williams, Gabe Davis, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. The ninth opens with Jerick McKinnon, Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore, Buffalo Bills, Devin A-Chain, and Odell Beckham Jr. So we're back up on the clock here, and Jordan Addison is a no-brainer in the 9th round. I know people say, Nick, it's unlikely that you could get Jordan Addison in the 10th round. Well, while some leagues, there are people with rookie fever, there are other leagues where people don't want to draft rookies because they've never played in the NFL before, and I don't know how they're going to look in the NFL. This motherfucker was drafted in the 1st round. Sure, he's in the concussion protocol right now, but that doesn't matter because the NFL season starts like 2 weeks from now. Jordan Addison is in the driver's seat as the wide receiver 2 in Minnesota. I am fine drafting 2 players on Minnesota because the Minnesota Vikings are going to be a great offense in the NFL. If Addison wasn't there, though, I probably would have leaned with even going with 2 Browns players, Elijah Moore, or to be honest with you, the wide receivers were kind of weak in that range. Probably Brandon Cooks if I wanted to go wide receiver there again and not go with another running back. So after Jordan Addison Ray, Jeff Wilson Jr., Elijah Moore, Rashad Penny, Cortland Sutton, Zach Charbonnet, Damian Harris, Elijah Mitchell, the Eagles defense, Devin Singletary, and Ezekiel Elliott. So back up on the clock here. 4 running backs, 1, 2, 3, 4 wide receivers, perfectly balanced as all things should be. We're taking Ingram here. Ingram, at this price, he will fall. These tight ends will fall. They just all feel the same in this range. Like, I like Ingram more than the other guys, but if I had to draft Njoku, Schultz, or Higbee, I'd probably have felt the exact same way. Something important to also note is in these simulations, a lot of times, people aren't drafting 2 tight ends super early, but there's a chance that someone drafts Kyle Pitts, is scared that Kyle Pitts might suck, and then in the 7th or the 8th round, they draft Evan Ingram or David Njoku. So you got to make sure you kind of protect yourself against that, and same thing with quarterbacks, right? If you wanted to wait at quarterback, right, you're like, oh, I love Daniel Jones, well, make sure you take him around the 9th or 10th round, because there's a chance that one of your league mates that drafted Pat Mahomes in the 2nd round ends up coming up in the 10th round or the 9th round, is like, oh, yeah, look at Daniel Jones, he's still available, let me take him, which you should not do. I drafted Allen in the 3rd round. I'm not taking another quarterback. But some people will. Doesn't make sense, but people will do it. Back up on the clock here. Going to go wide receiver here. Jacoby Myers, Nico Collins, Allen Lazard. I haven't drafted Jacoby Myers once on any of my teams. He was really good and has been a guy that I've been targeting in New England the last 2 years. But with Adams there, with Jacobs there, there's just so many big targets that are ahead of Jacoby Myers. They still have Hunter Renfrow as well. So, I don't know. Like, I'd rather just take the shot on an offense that I feel like is going to be a little bit better, even though I like the skill players of Adams and Jacobs. Like, we all know on paper, while I hope the Raiders' offense is really good, they probably wind up as, like, a middle-of-the-road team. Nico Collins, Allen Lazard, Rondell Moore, all a lot more ideal in this spot. So, we're going to go receiver. We're going to go with Allen Lazard this time. Normally, I take Nico Collins. Allen Lazard should be the number 2 on the Jets. I think the Jets are going to start the season off real slow. Like, their matchups for the first couple of weeks are as tough as having intercourse in a waterbed. The thing moves everywhere. It's just not a fun experience. So, when it comes back to Allen Lazard, I don't love the pick necessarily, but I recognize there is upside there, right? And the upside would be incredibly high, knowing the other receivers on the Jets. If something happened to Garrett Wilson, now knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, but the upside is still there with that. So when it comes to having Evan Ingram as our tight end, he's kind of in the range where some people might draft a second tight end, and you could consider drafting a second tight end. I won't personally. If you drafted Ingram, and you're like, oh, Ridley's there, they still have a lot of weapons, maybe he's going to go down in production, maybe I need a second tight end, that thought process makes sense to me. We're back up on the clock here. Just going to go running back and receiver with our last 2 picks before kicker and defense. We're not handcuffing any of our guys. Zamir White's a guy we've been tapping in drafts, but now that the boy Josh Jacobs is back, really no need to do that. So we're going to go with Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard's one of my favorite handcuffs in drafts. Right now, Miles Sanders is still banged up, so there's a chance that Miles Sanders maybe isn't good to go week 1, and then Chuba Hubbard is a super hot commodity in that scenario. There's also a chance that Miles Sanders isn't all that great. He's not this 3-down back that they're fucking sucking him off to be. And then maybe Chuba Hubbard ends up having more of a serious role in Carolina. And now we're going to go with our last pick here. We're going to go wide receiver. And again, it really is just a pick your poison here deep in drafts. You can really go any direction. We're going to go with Jonathan Mingo for the upside shot. He finishes as the #1 receiver in Carolina. And it also just feels great to get that rookie wide receiver super late in drafts, right? Jordan Addison, we know his role week 1, right? We don't know Jonathan Mingo's role. Maybe Jonathan Mingo's the wide receiver 4 on this team, or maybe he's the wide receiver 2 or 1, right? And those rookie wide receivers typically are the guys that help you win your league late on in the season. He could also be a cut candidate after week 1 for our fantasy football team, but these high upside shots are what I'm trying to do in the 13th round, right? I'm not trying to take some layup, some super safe wide receiver that you're never going to fucking play in your life. I want to take the upside shot of a guy that could end up being a locked-in player on my team weekly, or if I feel super confident in Johnson, Hill, Cooper Kupp, or not Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper, maybe I just trade away that receiver or one of those other wide receivers so I could play Jonathan Mingo. So we're back up on the clock here. We're going to go kicker first. We're going to go with Tyler Bass. I know in some leagues, the kickers are going to go earlier. It's not really rocket science when it comes to kickers. You just draft whatever the best one available is. And then for defense, you want to draft a defense playing a not-so-hot opponent week 1. The Saints get the Titans. I think the Titans offense is going to be a little bit better than people think in week 1. But still, I think they're a solid pick. The Commanders I like as well. That defenses to draft video is coming very soon. If it's not this week, it's going to be at the beginning of next week. We got a 96 out of 100 to me. This team is a 100 out of 100. We got an A. Our team is comprised of Josh Allen, Josh Jacobs, Alexander Madison, Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, Evan Ingram, Deontay Johnson, the Saints, Tyler Bass. The bench is comprised of Javonte Williams, Khalil Herbert, Jordan Addison, Ray, Alan Lazard, Chuba Hubbard, and Jonathan Mingo. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you didn't end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button down below. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good boy.